Hi, this is Steve McDaniel, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about the most important part of your auto insurance policy. In fact, it is so important that the state of Texas has required people to have a certain amount of it. And that, of course, is your auto liability portion. The reason why that is so important is because that is the one area where somebody can come back on you for their injuries and force you to have to pay for whatever damage you did to them. It's the part that pays for whatever vehicle or person you damaged. The state actually requires, as you most likely know, a 25, 50, 25 amount of coverage. That's the state minimum. Not the recommended, and I highly don't recommend that. And I'm going to show you why here in just a minute. And I really feel like that most people, if there's any way they can possibly work it into their budget to go with a higher limit, they're going to want to do that if they understand it. But the problem is so few people understand it, and that's why I'm sharing this with you today. So it's real important that if you don't watch any of the other videos that I send you or information I send you, it's real important to follow this one. These first two numbers have to do with the bodily injury portion. That is what's used to pay for injuries to whomever you've damaged their physical bodies in an accident. This last number has to do with their actual property, which is usually the vehicle. So as long as you don't run into a vehicle worth over $25,000, you're probably going to be okay. But even not necessarily, because if you hit that car and you force that car into another car, you could be responsible for several vehicles. So that's one reason why you might want to go with a higher number than that as well. But for the purposes of this conversation, we're talking about the personal injury side of this. What this first number means, this right here is the maximum amount that the insurance company will pay for one person's injury. This number is a cumulative total of dollars that they will pay for everyone's injury. So let's say, for example, let's use this as an example right here. Let's say, for example, you met Jack, Jill, and Sam at an accident because you ran into them. You caused their damage. Jack went to the hospital. He walked out with a $20,000 hospital bill. Jill, she has a little bit more injuries. She walks out with $55,000 of hospital cost. And Sam was the most injured. His hospital bill ended up being $95,000. Now, if you're in the healthcare industry, you know it doesn't take very long to accumulate these kind of injuries. So does this seem realistic? I mean, it's very realistic. Only just a few days can put you right there. So many injuries are much more than this, but I just want to take a pretty conservative illustration for you. Let's say you've got the 25, 50 state minimum required liability limit. You're legal. You've done what you're required to do. Jack has his $20,000 of injuries. So since his $20,000 is less than this per person limit, he's totally paid for. You don't have to worry anything about that, except that his $20,000 comes off of this $50,000 total, so that only leaves $30,000 left out of this $50,000 to cover these other people's injuries. Now Jill, she has $55,000 of injuries, but you've got a per person limit of $25,000. So that's all this policy is going to pay for her injuries. So that leaves $30,000 left for you to cover. And that $25,000 added to this $20,000, this $45,000 comes off of this $50,000. That only leaves $5,000 to go towards Sam's injuries. Now Sam's got $95,000 worth of hospital bills, but you've only got $5,000 left out of that $50,000. So now then, insurance company's only going to pay $5,000, so now it leaves you owing $90,000 for Sam's injury. You don't even know Sam. You just met him. You don't know Jill either, but you get to pay $120,000 of their hospital bills. But let's say you decided instead of the $25.50, you're going to have $100, $300 liability coverage. Once again, Jack's taken care of, and out of this, you've got only $20,000 coming off of $300,000 now instead of $50,000. So now you have $280,000 left to cover Jill and Sam's injuries. Well, Jill's got $55,000 of damages of hospital bills, but you got a $100,000 per person limit now, so it's going to cover all $55,000 with plenty to spare. But of course, that $55,000 does come off of this remaining $280,000, and leaves you a balance of $225,000 to cover Sam's injuries. Sam's got $95,000 of hospital bills. It was close, but fortunately it's still under that $100,000, so the insurance company's got to pay that entire $95,000, and you've got plenty of balance here. You still got $225,000 left out of that $300,000. That's less than $95,000, so you've got plenty to cover that. You're not having to pay a thing. So instead of a $120,000 bill, you got a $0 balance. They're totally covered. You don't have to worry about it. So now then the question is, okay, what's the difference in cost between this and this? And there's also an option in here that's a $5,100, and you can even go to more than that. Which, if Sam's injuries had been $110,000 with this policy, it would have only, even though you had all this extra balance here, it would still only paid $100,000. So if this bill was $110,000, the insurance company would have paid the $100,000. You'd have been stuck with the remaining $10,000. And so I'd have $10,000 in red over here if that's what his injuries had been. So some people like to go with the $250,000, $500,000. So I mean, you have all those choices, and so really the point of this whole thing is for you to know what your policy covers, so that you can make an educated decision and not be shocked if you've got the state minimum. You think you've done all you got to do, but then you see all these big bills coming in, and well, why am I having to pay this? I had liability, I had the state requirement. You're still required if you have that. Whereas if you've got more coverage to cover it, none of us knows what's going to happen. Main thing is to be informed. Take a look at the difference in cost so you can make a decision on that. Some people may say, hey, I just can't spend any more money on insurance. Maybe you might want to consider raising your deductible to offset this cost. So at any rate, hopefully that helps. I'll be back with some other tips at another time.